hear the stories unfold. Division One dreams, let the future be told. Sean on the mic, he's the voice, the guide. Licking Brad, riding always right by his side. From practice to prime time, we telling it true. It's more than the game, it's the person in view.
To W Swish. I'm Sean Schultz with Brad Lake and Blake Spadaro, and we're joined by the best media personality in the business, Meghan Mckeown. How are you?
Well, what an intro. Definitely not true. Some fabrication on that, but I'm good. I'm so happy to be with you guys, and I cannot believe that in just a couple short weeks we're going to be in season. It is absolutely insane how fast time flies.
I'm excited for it, and while I enjoyed the finals, I was kind of just waiting for it to be done. I'm on college.
Yeah, it was a great season. It was a weird season. A lot of injuries, just like it was, long, but still like every single year I'm fascinated about how A'ja Wilson just continues to like somehow get better and better. So obviously the product on the floor is great. Curious how all the CBA, negotiations are going to go over the next couple of months, but excited to also see what the future of the league holds. But yes, on to the next. College hoops is coming, and I feel like there's more momentum and interest than ever, and the talent level is just absolutely bonkers.
I'm excited for Northwestern's roster. I mean, you have the two Spanish imports. Your dad was talking about them at Media Day, who are just getting acclimated to the team. What do you feel about the Northwestern roster, and your dad's departure has given them extra motivation?
Yeah, I'm excited about this year's team. I had an opportunity to go to practice last week and see them in action. And it's going to be a really cool style of play. They're a little smaller this year, so they can play a lot faster. They have a really good grad transfer from Furman named Tate Walters, who I think flew under the radar quite a bit when it came to the portal. A lot of like the staffs, like I can't believe more Power Fours didn't offer her. So that's a name, insider information you're going to know of. I think this season quite a bit. Tate Walters doing big things so far early on in the preseason. Then of course, Caroline Lau and her final season as well for Northwestern. I'm excited to see her kind of take the next step. Same with Casey Harder and Grace Sullivan. So, you have some really solid pieces. So yeah, look, at the end of the day, the Big Ten is one of the toughest conferences in the country from top to bottom. But it's also proven that like you can finish 12th in the league and still be an NCAA tournament team. You can finish 15th in the league and still be a team that makes it to the postseason. So there's a lot of, room when you have so many teams. So I'm excited to see kind of where the Cats fall in that. And it's a long year, but hopefully they can send my dad out on a high note. That'd be really exciting.
It's a unique position kind of coming up in the Big Ten and working for them, being Joe's daughter. How do you feel about his final year? And it sounds weird to say it, but his legacy.
Yeah, this is something it's like the most commonly asked question I've had over the last like couple of weeks. And it still hasn't quite hit me yet, just because my whole entire life, all I've known is my dad being a head coach. And it's also really rare to not only be a head coach for 40 plus years, but also he's never been fired, which is kind of crazy. My husband's a college basketball coach on the men's side. And we joke, my husband's staff got let go last year when he was an assistant, and he jokes that he's been fired more than my dad has. But because, like this is such a volatile industry, like there is no job security necessarily. Your job security is in your wins. And I'm just so impressed by how he has consistently, for the most part, throughout his career, just constantly been successful. The last 3 years at Northwestern obviously have not been great, but this is still a man who built up a dynasty at George Washington, went to 15 of 19 NCAA tournaments while he was there, multiple draft picks. They were ranked in the top 10 in the country back before mid-majors even did that. That wasn't a thing. And to be honest, it's still not really a thing. When Joe McKeown was at GW, it was. They were ranked 8th in the country at one point. And then he left all that to go to the worst program in the Big Ten at the time in Northwestern, who I think had won a combined 3 Big Ten games in like 4 years. He
Yeah.
came in, it was insane. And he's now been there for 18 years. He has gone to the NCAA tournament multiple times. He has won the Big Ten conference, which is so difficult to do. Multiple WNBA draft picks, like built this thing up in a way that I'm not sure in this era it can ever be built up like that again. And for that, I am forever going to be so proud. And more so than anything, I could talk all day about my dad, as you can see. I'm
That's
just
okay.
so proud of who he is as a person. You know, like this is a very egotistical business, and he is the most humble person in the world. He is the kindest person. He makes you feel like you've known him for 25 years. He just has that ability to make you feel like you're the most important person in the room. So more so than the fact that he's a total rock star in terms of his career, the person that he is makes me more proud than anything.
Is he going to be more of a stay-in grandpa? And
I'm trying, man. I'm trying to get him on my payroll, see if he'll, move in and help me out a little bit. So, because I've got a crazy season coming up too. But, I imagine he's going to spend quite a bit of time on the golf course, quite a bit of time. Maybe he'll actually like really work on a wine cellar, all the good things. He deserves it.
what about you for the upcoming season? What are you going to be doing for the Big Ten? Has your role changed at all?
I'm actually going to be doing a lot with ESPN in studio. So I was doing quite a bit of that last year. I'm back this year for that, which will be a lot of fun. I will be with NBC Sports again, doing quite a
Nice.
bit of Big Ten, Big East work, and Fox FS1 doing quite a bit there with the Big East, Big Ten, Big 12, whatever it might be. Just a couple of games here and there with the Big Ten Network. I've been like fortunate to kind of work with a lot more nationally. So it's going to be more of a, Power Four, mid-major focus versus just the Big Ten Conference. Although that is where my love is, and I will always be like forever grateful to the Big Ten Conference, Big Ten Network for really giving me my start. And that's definitely where I feel the most love for sure.
How did you make the decision to kind of go into journalism?
I grew up in a sports house, obviously with my dad, but my mom like doesn't get talked enough about enough in terms of like building my love for sports. She's from Oklahoma, grew up a diehard OU sports fan. So like every single Saturday in our house, we watched College Game Day and watched OU football. And my mom really kind of like helped breathe that love of sports into me. And like, obviously my dad and I used to travel with my dad and go recruiting with him and all that. And I grew up around the game. But overall, like my mom was heavy on my influence. And like watching College Game Day made me want to get into it. Like I loved seeing what Erin Andrews did, right? Every single weekend with football. And I was like, I want to do that. Because at the time too, she was really big sideline reporting basketball. Doris Burke, somebody who
Yeah.
I really idolized young. So, and then Big Ten Network, whenever we moved to Chicago, came out to do a story on my family. I have a brother with autism. It was a big reason why my dad chose to go to Northwestern. Services in Chicago much better than DC at the time. And yeah, and thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I was like, I love talking to people, love telling stories. Like this seems kind of like, the path for me. So that's where the idea was born. And I was one of those weird 16-year-olds who knew what I wanted to do. Which I
Hmm.
know is not like common. And also like if you're watching this and you're 16 and you don't know what you want to do, that's fine. You're gonna be okay. Um, yeah, and here we are now, I guess. Goodness gracious, 16, 17 years later. Shoot, I'll be 34 next month. So
25, I say that's what age women stay permanently.
there we go. That's the right answer.
Got next with Zora Stevenson. What was the original vision for the podcast, and how do you think it has evolved over the years?
Zora Stevenson became just like fast friends when we started working together with NBC. And like to this day, she's like one of my closest friends. She just had twins. I just had a baby. So like I feel like we're just like in lockstep with each other in terms of like so many life things. And so that idea came because our first year working together, we literally went to Iowa City like it felt like 10 times. And we just like love basketball. And at the time, I mean, this was it's crazy how fast women's basketball has like grown over the last 2 years, even because at the time, this is like 2023-ish. We were like, there really isn't like a consistent women's basketball podcast out there just dedicated to women's hoops at the time. There may be a couple here and there, but like not, we felt like it was still like a pretty small market and kind of like, well, why not us? We both played. We cover, the Big Ten. We've covered all of Caitlin Clark's stuff and her rise. Like, why not just get into it and talk about it? And so we did. And it was such a fun project to work on with Zora just because of our friendship, more than anything. But yeah, I'm really proud about how that kind of launched and went on.
Like growing up with your father is a Hall of Fame coach. What was the biggest thing that he taught you? How do you feel that
This is one of my favorite Joe McKeown stories. When I was 10, we were in the Atlantic 10 with GW and went to the A10 tournament, which was in Philly at the time. And we were playing at Temple, I believe it was. So day of the quarterfinals, there were these two Temple fans. They're just like students. And it was like GW was playing like somebody that was like St. Joe's, maybe. They weren't playing Temple. But these two guys from Temple came down and sat right near my dad and heckled him the entire game. Just like screamed at him, yelled at him, heckled him the entire game. And I was, little at the time, and I used to hate when people yelled at my dad. It would make me like very sad. And so, afterwards, me and my mom were like, that's crazy, talking to my dad. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. So the next day, I believe it was the semifinals, we're playing Temple. Those two guys are back and they're there during warm-up, start heckling the team, my dad, everything. My dad gets me and my mom out of the stands. And he's like, come on. And we walk over to these two guys and my dad introduces himself. He's like, hey guys, Joe McKeown, you guys are killing me, man. Like, you guys are pretty good. Like, starts like hyping him up. Like, this is like some of the best heckling I've ever received. And he's like, this is my wife. This is my daughter. We met him, blah, blah, blah. They were fine people. They were nice guys. Anyways, they shut up the rest of the game. Didn't say another word. And to me, like the biggest lesson was, well, like he humanized us, right? Like he went in there, he was like, I'm a guy, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a father, like, and just like killed them with kindness. And it made them like stop heckling. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen. So like that concept and notion of like killing people with kindness and I don't know, like reminding everyone you're a human. I think it's so important. And I think it's a skill that applies not just to heckling, but everyday life, right? Like you're always going to deal with difficult people. But it's the way you kind of respond in those situations that say a lot about your character.
Called your father's games for years, but
Yeah.
what's the difference between just broadcasting a Caitlin Clark game playing against a normal team and then just analyzing your father's games?
Yeah, I'm glad you actually brought up that because the first game for my dad I ever called was actually against Iowa, Caitlin Clark's freshman year. So going into that, and this is why like I will always be so grateful for Big Ten Network, but especially Sue Marriott at Big Ten Network, who's the coordinating producer. She's been my boss for years. Um, you know, the argument or the concern rather about me being on Big Ten games was, your dad, how would coaches feel about it? So Sue Marriott called Lisa Bluter before that game and asked, are you okay with us putting Meghan Mckeown on it? And to Lisa Bluter's credit, she was like, absolutely, please do it. She's professional, all that. And so it was Caitlin Clark's first ever national television game. It was the first time I was calling my dad's game. There was like a lot at stake, and I worked with Lisa Byington, and who's a great friend and mentor of mine, one of the best in the business. And she was like, we're going to be good. We're not even going to mention the fact that you're his kid. Obviously, we'll say your name, but we're not even going to get into like, oh, it's your dad, whatever. And I'm really fortunate that like I am able to go into a mindset of like pure neutrality and like just not thinking about, oh my God, like I hope the Cats play well. I'm not thinking that because it's a profession. And like I'm grateful too that like my parents and my family like treat me like a professional. They're not like, hey, is Monica Sonata going to play this game? Like they're not doing that. Also, I would never tell them, it's my job. It's my profession. And my parents have enough respect for me and what I'm doing to not put me in that position. And I really am proud of the relationship I've built with the coaches in the Big Ten to realize that like you're not selling our secrets. You're here to help elevate our game. And so I am really proud of that. But doing his games, I am able to go into a different mindset. But when I'm not doing his games, I mean, I'm full fan mode.
Tell us as a secret. Are you the favorite daughter or is Allie?
Oh my gosh. So here's what I'll say. I don't know. My parents are like, I don't have a favorite. And I do kind of feel that's true. Although like Allie McKeown is like really, I felt like I was always my dad's favorite, but right now my sister is his administrative assistant. And like, I think she's like kind of climbing the ranks and she's becoming the favorite for both my mom and dad. She's the youngest, she's the funniest, she's the wittiest. Like I get it. And she's, geography bias. She's right there in Chicago with them. So, I don't know. My sister Allie's pretty awesome. So she's everyone's favorite, I think.
We prefer you over Allie. No offense to Allie.
I don't know. If you guys really met Allie, you would definitely probably prefer her. And I get it. Like she's so fun.
Big Ten has led the charge with their mental health and wellness cabinet initiative. Can you speak to how that program has helped the conference and how it can be a model for other conferences?
I think that mental health has definitely taken the forefront over the last couple of years. Like even when I was in college, which was a long time ago, but it wasn't really that long ago. But this wasn't talked about. This wasn't a thing. But I'm really proud of like how, the conference has made that a priority. And especially nowadays, the amount of pressure these athletes are under with social media, first off. Like social media was around when I was in college, but it wasn't what it is now. Like we all live, eat, sleep, breathe Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. And so now more so than ever, like fans have the access to these athletes. Like they can tweet at them, they can message them. And you didn't have that access before. So the amount of pressure that puts on 18 to 22-year-olds who are still children, by the way, like they're still kids. I always like, it's funny, like my husband, my dad, and I, like when we're talking about recruits, we're like, oh, this kid, talking about players on the team, because they are kids. They haven't had to, they've been exposed to a world and been forced to grow up really quickly because of the position that they're in. And a lot of it comes with the territory, but they still, they're still kids at the end of the day. They're still learning. So I think it's important that, universities, conferences, everybody's kind of investing in the mental health of these kids because they're dealing with the type of pressure that we really haven't seen before. I think the last 20 years, you could argue like, yeah, of course, like football players have felt it. Like I think back to like a Johnny Manziel type of player who was just across society so big and the pressure that I imagine would feel. But now like with media rights deals, like you have access to women's basketball more so than ever. And so there is an aspect of it where, there should be resources in place to help kids, figure out how to handle a lot of this pressure that they have.
The Big Ten last year went through a huge change with the addition of the Pac-12 schools. Can you speak to the challenges last year, scheduling, traveling that really affected the conference as a whole?
It's crazy to think that, I'm thinking as I'm like mentally preparing to do all of my West Coast games, and that's like a 6-hour flight from New York to LA, right? Like I can get to London, England in 6 hours. So it's crazy just like when you think about how big these conferences now have become in terms of travel. But look, it's definitely a thing, right? Like there's no way of putting it in. Talking to some players at Big Ten Media Day, like UCLA players were telling me the hard part about it was not just like the travel, like the travel's fine. You're chartering. It is what it is, but it's like, you're missing a lot of class. And so like, you kind of feel behind there because at the end of the day, you're taking a day to get out because you got to get your body acclimated to the time change, all of that. So that definitely poses a challenge. And I think back to like some big issues, like you think about the Los Angeles wildfires last year, that Northwestern couldn't get out there to play because of don't want to take away some like the resources that the firefighters needed in terms of like hotels, hospitality, stuff like that. So you definitely have some challenges, some things that they deal with on the West Coast that you don't deal with in the Midwest or the East Coast. And like flipping the token, you have like blizzards and snow that you don't deal with on the West Coast that you're dealing with when you got to play in Nebraska or Minneapolis on January 15th, you know? So definitely I mean, there's no doubt the challenges. It sounds like for the most part, everyone's been able to make it work. But I think no matter what, at the end of the day, like basketball's not football, right? Football, like you have one game a week. You can travel in a day or two before. Like it's not, and it's consistent. Like basketball, you're playing nowadays with TV Monday through Sunday, sometimes twice, right? Like it's crazy, like the schedule now with that. So players have been able to make it work. I also find it funny that, you know, so many of these decisions are made with football in mind. I think about when the conference expanded and added Maryland and Nebraska a couple of years ago. That was when I was a sophomore in college. No, we added Nebraska when I was a sophomore in college. I had just graduated when Maryland came into the league. Those are dynasty, or in Rutgers, sorry, it was Nebraska and Rutgers. No, Maryland and Rutgers got added. See, I can't even keep track anymore.
That's okay.
But you go to 14 teams and like those are women's basketball powerhouses you're bringing in traditionally. Rutgers to see Vivian Stringer, powerhouse. Maryland, Brenda Fries. Are you kidding me? Nebraska at the time was one of the best teams in the country in the Big 12. So consistently, every single time the Big Ten has added teams, they've added women's basketball powerhouses. USC, UCLA, Oregon was in the Final Four not too long ago. Washington has now had a resurgence with their team. So look, I could talk about the Big Ten forever. As you can see, it's a great league. It's one of the best leagues in the country. It's so competitive night in and night out. And having those West Coast teams has only raised the profile of the conference.
Being a new mom, there's a lot of working moms, working dads out there. What advice would you give a new mom who's kind of struggling with balancing family versus career and how to go about that? I know you had a nice Instagram video that made all of us tired watching your day, but
No, you know what, Sean? Thank you for that question. That's, you know, it's my biggest piece of advice is that like you can do anything, right? Like, and that goes for literally anything, male or female, parent, non-parent, like what you want to do. Like you can, if you want to do something, you can do it. You know, Stephanie White actually like kind of gave me good advice. I did an interview with her a couple of months ago for Ion, and I was like, how do you do all this with kids? She was like, I was like, how do you balance it? And she was like, there is no balance. Like that doesn't exist. And I thought that was good advice because especially, you know, as a woman and as a working mom, like you feel like you have to balance everything. And it's also okay if like you don't have a perfect day, you know? Like there are certainly days with my little one, he's 8 months old. We just got our first tooth. We are so fussy. He's like, has to be holding, I have to hold him the whole time some days, like in terms of that fussiness. And I get like, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, can I just like go take a shower real quick? But that's okay. You know, I think it's okay to feel every emotion. Like you're okay to feel frustrated some days. You're okay to feel like, that wasn't my best performance. And when it comes to working, I went back and I worked the NCAA tournament for ESPN 5 weeks postpartum because I wanted to do it, you know, and that was important for me personally as an individual, just to go back and like get my mojo back a little bit and feel like I was around adults. And like I love what I do, and I feel so blessed to be able to work for the people I work for, to do what I do, to work in a game that I love and I've grown up loving, and I get paid for it. Like that's the best part for me. So this was something I wanted to do, and like don't let anybody make you feel guilty for doing what's best for you, because what's best for you and what works for you might not work for someone else, and that's okay. Like you cannot worry about what other people are saying about you, because you are doing what's best for you and your family, and that has to take priority every day.
you know, shout out to the badass moms that are in women's hoops. You did it. You just mentioned coming back 5 weeks postpartum. You know, Kim Caldwell a week after giving birth with the stomach flu.
And people gave her a hard time, like, why is she back? If she wants to be back and it works for her, let her be back. Who are you to judge? You don't know what's going on in the Caldwell house, you know? So that, to your point though, amazing. Women are amazing. JC Hoyt also at Oklahoma State just had a baby. My good friend Kate Popovic, head coach of Bradley women's basketball, is about to give birth in December. So like these women are awesome. They're doing it all. They're handling it all. And I just feel lucky to you know, be in the same stratosphere as some of these people. You just need like 4 straight hours of sleep. Like that is like the dream. Luckily, my kid's sleeping like 11 hours right now. Like knock on wood, I'll knock on my
Yeah.
head for that. Like, but the sleep thing, that thing, that's a whole different ball game.
Your reviews on Taylor Swift's new album?
This is the question I've been waiting for. I love it. I'm a Swiftie. I have been since 2007. I love it. Everything she does, I love. I'm probably the wrong person to ask that because I just think that like everything she touches turns to gold. But you know what? I love that she's in love. Makes me happy for her. Also love the song Father Figure, Elizabeth Taylor. Wood's fun. Sorry, but it is.
Yeah.
It just is. It's fun. So I'm very excited. She just announced that she's doing a 6-part docu-series that's going to come out on Apple TV or Disney Plus on December 12th. So I have that on my calendar. Just all things Taylor Swift, who, by the way, helps empower women like myself and a lot of moms that you can do everything.
He hasn't invited you yet for the Chiefs games?
No, but you want to know what? Caitlin Clark's hanging out in her box again at the Chiefs game. I wake up this morning. I can't stay up past 9 p.m. anymore. I wake up this morning to a flurry of text messages of like tweets of Caitlin Clark in, Taylor Swift's, Travis Kelce's box of the Chiefs. I'm like, that girl's just living the dream.
Yeah, but it should be you being invited.
Should be me. Should be me.
Let's get a petition going online and see how much traction we can get.
Let me know how that works out, please. Yes.
Meghan, thank you so much for joining us. We know you got the baby, and hopefully you can get some sleep time in.
Thanks, guys. Excited for this.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for all the work you all do, helping to, raise the profile of this amazing sport.